Well, welcome everyone. We thank you all for joining Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. Now, we spent a lot of time over the last few months talking about new trends, new changes in technologies, and the implementation of cold climate heat pumps in particular, and incentives to help, get that motion moving of progressing on this new period in HVAC history, where we're focusing a lot on the decarbonization. But one of the misconceptions that we hear a lot in the industry is decarbonization and electrification being held into the same teeter like they're the exact same component. And that's really not the scenario. So today we're going to spend some time with Bob O'Brien. Bob, how are you today?
Hey, Clifton, how are you?
Fantastic. From Nora and Eugene Silverstein, our very own. Hello, Eugene.
Hey.
And we want to spend a little bit of time helping clarify and understand what the decarbonization actually is, and understand that not all fuels are going away. We're not going completely electric. There are many ways to be able to complete this decarbonization movement. So if we spend a little bit of time talking about what decarbonization is, it is a global effort to reduce our carbon footprint. To be able to sustain the life that we know on this planet, we have to reduce our carbon emissions. Now, we have the ability to do that in many ways. Things like recycling and controlling waste and fuels and gases. But we also have the electrification, and now we have that component that is feared the most, especially by those living up in the Northeast, is what about fuel? Because not all regions of the world are right for heat pumps. Yes, we are building and we are sponsoring competitions for new technologies to be able to get higher capacity, lower ambient condition working heat pumps, but it's not exactly the solution for everyone. So, Bob, let's spend a little bit of time talking about your side of this effort, because there's a lot happening in your spectrum of the industry. So, let's talk a little bit about what's going on over at Nora. And what is Nora?
Sure. Nora is the National Oilheat Research Alliance. At this point, we're heavily focused on renewable liquid fuels, primarily biodiesel.
Right.
Renewable diesel to a somewhat lesser extent. Nora is a congressionally authorized checkoff program. Similar to most of the ones you're familiar with are probably agricultural. Got milk, beef, It's what's for dinner, pork, the other white meat. Nora is the same exact thing. So it's industry requested, industry funded. And there's three major areas of focus: technician education, consumer education, and research and development. All three of those at the moment are heavily weighted towards transitioning to renewable liquid fuels.
Okay.
Petroleum products have a finite lifespan ahead of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a limited amount of use. People don't understand that, we're starting to siphon off from that well that is not endless. So we have to be able to move forward as a planet, as an entire civilization, and look for our alternative fuel resources.
NORA's National Oilheat Research Alliance, it's congressionally authorized, so unfortunately there's no name change possible.
Right.
But we'd love to get away from oil heat to liquid fuels or renewable liquid fuels. Not much of a future in the oil heating business at this point, or any fossil fuel for that matter.
But there's still a lot of fuel oil out there. I mean,
5 million homes and businesses, which is it's a lot of work from anybody's perspective, even though it's a fraction of, nationwide.
The total industry.
Yeah, it's about 6
big.
or 7% of the, nationwide. They use it for both heating and domestic hot water, more heavily weighted into the Northeast, but it's scattered everywhere. States can opt in to participate in NORA. 23 states do participate in NORA currently. So it's not quite half, but pretty close. Mostly Northeast, mid-Atlantic up through Maine. But there's pretty strong concentration scattered out in the Pacific Northwest. Alaska, obviously, quite strong.
Sure.
Yeah, it's tough to run a pipeline up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
A natural gas one anyway. But we're rapidly transitioning to renewable fuels. The moves away from heating oil. There's state mandates in a lot of the Northeast states, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and those are the heaviest users, the heaviest concentration.
Primary sectors.
Yeah. So biodiesel has been the main focus. It's a little more readily available.
Sure.
Renewable diesel, which they call it HVO in Europe, is kind of not reached the market yet, but it's hopefully going to be here pretty soon. So we're doing a lot of research.
Okay, so that's the Euro diesel that I keep seeing.
Yes, you'll see it talked about particularly in the UK.
Sure.
Yeah, it's heavily used here in California for transportation use.
Oh, okay.
but it's starting to work its way into the East Coast and into the heating market. So we want to be ready for it when it arrives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all these fuels aren't exactly the same as petroleum. So that's really the education efforts are focused towards the technicians to get them used to. It's not exactly the way it was. Pretty close, but not exact.
Yeah, here in the Midwest, so I'm in central Indiana, and fuel oil used to be utilized very heavily here, especially for farming purposes. A lot of grain bins were dried with, fuel oil tanks, and we still have some. So when I first got into the industry, we had some particularly old farms that still used a lot of fuel oil. So it is a industry that has changed, but is definitely still here. And so how do you supplement those fuels? We hear a lot about the diesel industry, for transportation and locomotion, but what about for heating in our residential and our commercial industrial applications? So we still have that entire sector that we have to cater to in this decarbonization movement.
Yeah, actually, Indiana is a state that participates in Nora. There are still quite a few oil-heated businesses and homes in Indiana.
Yeah.
And the biofuels really make it a nice circular economy for Indiana, where you do grow soybeans, not as many as Illinois or Iowa, but there's quite a bit of soybeans in Indiana.
Yeah.
So they could actually be grown, processed, and completely used entirely within the state. So it's an American product. It's a Midwest product, mostly soy, canola, or the feedstocks they use to produce it. So it's a completely circular economy in those states, in the Midwest states.
Okay. Now, so when we start talking about doing like retrofits, are we mainly talking about burner assemblies and orifices? Is that?
There's actually none. It's typically referred to by percentage. So when people say B20, B50, B100, B means biodiesel, and the number is the percentage of the fuel that is biodiesel. So B20 would be 20% biodiesel, 80% petroleum. B100 is 100% biodiesel. At the B20 level, there's really no changes at all. It's a drop-in. It's listed under ASTM 396, the spec for heating oil.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Up to B20. So there's really not much changes. All the burners available new on the market are already B20 compatible. So there's probably 400,000 or 500,000 of those 5 million using B20 at the moment. And the vast majority have had no changes whatsoever.
Yeah, that's
as the blend level increases is where the differences become more pronounced. But at that level, it's minuscule.
Is it a BTU factor or is it a velocity factor?
There was slightly less BTUs per gallon.
Okay.
A little less than 10% difference in biodiesel versus conventional heating oil.
Makes sense. Okay. All right. So we're definitely seeing some transitions here in the Midwest. Definitely see them on different areas. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Yep. We know that it is a checkoff program. So would you consider it a federal initiative for the oil sector?
The industry actually lobbied Congress to approve this. They're self-initiated. The chicken guys and the milk guys and the California cheese guys, they're in it too. Lobby Congress to have these checkoff programs created to promote the industry, to fund the promotion of the industry internally.
Okay. It's nice to see that it's actually designed from the ground up as a evolution to an industry.
Yeah, it's not from Congress down. It's from all these industries up. They're primarily agricultural.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Quick question, Bob.
Sure.
So, you know what? This slide just came up to educate the public about benefits of oil heat. And that was exactly the question that I was going to pose right now.
Aha, fantastic.
And I mean, in the industry, we're trained and we learn about, fuels, fuel options, new fuels. But what steps are being taken to educate the public? Think about an oil burner from the 1970s and the early 1980s, compare it to technologies that's now. I mean, obviously, the equipment's burning a lot cleaner, burning more efficiently. And now with these pushes, and the move toward the biofuels, the cleanliness, the efficiencies, are, greatly improving. So what initiatives are being taken to get public buy-in? So that was my question, and boom, like magic, you put the slide up.
Aha, look at that.
Asking shall receive. Mostly it's pushed on the benefits of BioHeat. BioHeat's a trademark for blends below B100, obviously. And it's about the benefits of approaching decarbonization by changing fuels rather than by going to a clean fuel rather than altering the whole system. As Eugene's familiar, up in the Northeast, there's a lot of hydronic systems. It's heavily weighted towards hydronic. A lot of window shakers still
Mm-hmm.
here. A lot of old buildings, particularly in the cities, Philadelphia, Boston, New York, that long stretch there. These are tough buildings to decarbonize. They don't lend themselves to split heat pump systems very well. In Europe, they've been doing a hybrid with air-to-water heat pumps in the
Sure.
hydronic systems. They typically use lower water temperatures than we do here, unfortunately. They have
Okay.
radiant panel rads. Typically, we're
Right.
in tube that needs higher water temperatures. So that's really not an answer for us. This makes it pretty easy for somebody to decarbonize at
Sure.
a minimal investment
Investment.
and very rapidly. So the consumer education is focused towards that.
So that's where this conversation kind of started, Eugene. As you know, I was looking through different topics that we need to cover. I seen an article from Nora about the biofuels and the decarbonization efforts of Nora, and I went, wait a minute, decarbonization from a fuel oil perspective. Now I need to know more, and then because it really changes that philosophy of decarbonization. When we think about decarbonization, we think we're just getting rid of everything that's carbon fuel based, and we're going with whatever we can to supplement that. But it's not the scenario. When we think about these boilers and these heating systems that were designed for specific temperature rises and volume of flow that cannot be done with some of these air source systems, exactly like Bob was just saying. And the cost of doing complete retrofits and redesigning these systems for higher BTU, higher capacity heating loads is not particularly feasible. May not even have the space to do such thing. So when we start talking about these alternative fuels, I had recognized biofuels in the agricultural because it's become very popular here in the Midwest for agricultural purposes, but I hadn't looked at it from the heating perspective. So it opened up my own perspective of what decarbonization is and the vast efforts that are happening right now from many different avenues. So it was very enlightening for myself. That's why I wanted us to talk about this and share it a little bit, because I've even had some of our own educators ask, well, what do we do about fuel oil? Am I supposed to really dump the entire fuel oil design system and go with a cold climate heat pump in the north? And I went, wow, that's a big investment, and that's a lot of redesign. So it opens up our thoughts a little bit to the options that we actually have.
You know what? Listen, it's funny you brought that up, and you're going to change the topic just for 2 seconds.
No, please do.
Organizations and the industry really has to move with changes.
Yeah.
If you look back 20, 30 years, Xerox advertised themselves as the copy company, the copier company. So they're a company. And now, if you look at Xerox, they're a document company. So now documents take on a lot of different appearances.
Sure, absolutely.
So, I think it's kind of interesting to see that, yes, as Bob said, Nora is the National Oilheat Research Alliance, and they can't change the name. But it's nice to see organizations such as Nora, moving forward.
Open to the opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because as an industry, we all have to do that. We keep talking about how much we need to impact the HVAC and refrigeration industry by using new technologies and new innovations. And this is to show that it really is in every sector of our industry, even the oil guys.
If you don't want to end up like Kodak,
Yeah.
right?
You have to evolve.
They held on to that film for way too long.
The Polaroids are coming back.
They are.
I just saw a Polaroid camera the other day.
I've got a teenager that wanted one just because it has the vintage look and feel. Replace that. So as we're talking about education, let's dive a little bit into where do we learn? Where do we become more familiar with, moving into these new types of fuels, Bob?
Sure. 1/3 of 3 of the legs of Nora, one of them is technician education, and probably the most important. So there's a 3-tier certification system. So this is in place nationwide. Entry level would be the bronze. It's a formal 80-hour class followed up by a test. Technicians who have 3 years experience and 100 hours of seat training, it could be virtual or physical, doesn't matter,
Okay.
are eligible to be silver certified, and gold would be 5 years of silver and 4 separate gold classes, kind of like grad level, very specific focus, combustion controls, airflow, 6-hour classes strictly on that one topic. Is a test for the bronze. It's a closed book test. The Nora Silver certification is a license in the states of Vermont and New Hampshire.
That's what I was looking for.
As well
okay.
as a county in New York. So we take the integrity of the test and the curriculum very seriously.
Sure.
These states would not accept this as a license if that were lax at all. So it's taken quite seriously. Passing, it's not a tough test, but passing is 78 for that reason, not a 65 or 70.
Sure.
Certification lasts for 5 years, and CEUs are required to renew
Annually?
over the 5 years.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, so you need CEUs to renew it. The decision was made to go with CEUs versus retesting, which some people do, a lot of people do. Not much of a point in taking the same test over and over again every 5 years.
Just make sure you know what's new.
Yeah, and the CEUs are, can change day to day. We just feel it's really important that techs stay on top of this stuff, that the CEUs are very important to, continue education, to move forward.
Well, we look at some of the, comparable items. You look at your EPA 608. Unfortunately, a lot of times that's a one and done. So wherever you entered the industry and you acquired your 608, because there are not those continuing education units or that recertification, you're never really staying up to date what has changed based on those regulations. And so that is another sector of our industry I really hope to see change in the near future. And I know, you can go ahead and you can put it out there in the chat messages right now if you'd like to. You can start throwing the virtual hammer at me. Speaking of that, we want to know where you're chiming in from. So hop in the chat box. Let us know where you're at in the world. We'd love to know where you're joining us from. But it really is very important to have those continuing education opportunities so you can see what those changes are. I mean, think about that. If I would have taken that test and it was a one and done 30 years ago and I was still working in the industry, I may not even be aware of the changes for biofuels and the new technologies that are now becoming part of my daily routine in my career.
Absolutely. That's why the decision was made to require CEUs, right, and eliminate retesting altogether.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Bob, if somebody is, let's say, gold certified and their certification lapses, they don't have the CEUs, so now 6 years down the road and they want to get recertified, what are they?
They can take the CEUs. There's a grace period.
Oh, awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So while we're here,
quite often, unfortunately.
Sure, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how long the grace period is, because when did my gold
Is Eugene in or out of the grace period? Well, Eugene, you know where you can find out more about that?
Oh, yeah.
You could scan this QR code and you could head right on over to Nora.com, the National Oilheat Research Alliance, and they would be happy to give you more information on this certification.
Actually, the website, Bob,
Yes.
I think the website is noraweb.org. Is that correct?
Yes.
Noraweb.org. I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah.
Yes.
So
But it will take you right there, so I copied it off from the webpage.
There you go.
That was just internal error.
No worries. That's fine.
All right, so I'll leave that up. If anyone wants to scan that, that will be out there in that inventory. So now let's look a little bit, let's dive a little bit deeper into each one of these, Bobs, if we need to.
Sure. The bronze is the entry level. As I said, the silver is the step up. The silver is the minimum required for licensure in those jurisdictions that have it. And the gold would require 5 years experience. What we recently did is one of the actually in addition. So it says 24, but it's actually 26 or 27. There's a Bioheat technical guidance class that's a prerequisite to all the renewals. So we felt it was, extremely important to get this information out there. So it is now required in addition to the other 24 CEUs. I believe it's 2 or 3, so it's either 26 or 27 actually. This is about 2 years old. It's an online presentation. It's currently being updated, should be done in a month or so. Even within the Bioheat world, there's continual changes. Manufacturers are changing stuff incredibly rapidly. UL in November just changed their standard to allow B100 burner testing. One manufacturer has already approved their burner, certified it for use with B100, and we expect there's only 3 in the United States, big ones anyway. We expect them to be right behind them. So this is updated continually also as new information becomes available.
Okay, very good. And anyone have any questions up to this point about oil and oil certifications and renewable fuels for the oil industry? So please let us know. Hop on in there in the chat. All right, so let's talk a little bit about our continuing education side of things.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically the reason, as we discussed before, you know, there's people with 30 years experience. It's really 1 year's experience 30 times.
Right, exactly.
And that's what we really want to try to avoid. It's not the same as it was 30, even 5 years ago. There's been huge changes, the electronics that are coming in. So you really need to stay on top of this. As we've also learned, it's not just the students. The teachers also need these continuing education. It's important for them to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Particularly the ones who've been out of the field for a while themselves.
Eugene?
Where I don't want to say they're out of touch. They're not. They're the best instructors out there.
Sure.
But there's that, you know, they haven't been in the field in, 10, 15, 20 years.
Exactly.
And after a while, you get far away from it and you're not on top of it every day. So it's important. The instructors all have to be certified, and the instructors need CEUs also.
Yeah. That's a big reason for us hosting the National HVACR Education Conference, is to bring light to our educators. We're all educators. We've all been to this point where we've been in the field, we've gotten certified, we start teaching, and then at some point we go, do I need to go back and recheck on my certifications? Because I just had to do it for myself for my own electrical license. I couldn't find my electrical license, and I had to go, oh my. Have I paid my dues? Have I done my CEUs? And so I had to make a phone call for that. But the education part of it, that's why we all joined together, to be able to talk about the things that are happening in the industry, to be more aware of how we need to stay up with technology for an industry. I mean, think about these things that are changing. I didn't even know that we had these opportunities, these changes, these advancements in our oil industry until just a few weeks ago. And I had to go, oh my. I'm so far behind, I need to reach out. And that's how I found Bob. And that's how this whole conversation started. So we all need our continuing education, for sure.
Absolutely. So Nora doesn't actually deliver this material ourselves. We have trade school partners, public high schools, for-profit trade schools, community colleges. There's state associations that run private trade schools. So we partner with approximately 50 or so.
Sure.
Across the country. We'd love to expand if anybody's out there and would interest in being able to add Nora certification for their students as a little value add. Love to have you. But we depend upon these partners, which is great. I mean, it's really the only way to do it, to spread it over such a huge footprint.
Absolutely.
A little bit of the drawback is the instructors themselves. How much do you really know about them? They have to be certified. We check them every so often, but we want to step up the level of that also. So most of them have come from the technical side. They've come out of the field. So they usually have great technical skills. They know the material. Classroom skills.
I got to deal with people now. You mean?
It's the
little people, young people.
Classroom skills. In some cases, may be lacking. So we're doing some work in that. But we partner with all these schools, and they're different constituencies. Public high school kids, we're really not going to do much with them. They're licensed by the state. It's a public high school. It is what it is in that situation. The state's vetting all these teachers.
Sure.
And they're high school kids. We can't treat them as we do the adults. So we're going to focus more of it on the adults, the community colleges and the trade schools. So this is a 2-week curriculum. Doesn't have to be done in one shot, but basically it's about 80 hours or so. So most of the 2-year community colleges just folded into their bigger 2-year. It's a couple weeks within their 2-year
within their program
or 18-month program. Yes.
Sure. Now, what about equipment? Are they actually working on live equipment?
One of the requirements to be a partner is that you have live fired equipment. You need hands-on.
Okay.
Would you want a surgeon who never was in the operating room, or a lawyer who never stepped foot in a courtroom? During COVID, it was great with the Zoom, but it really brought it home that this is a hands-on business.
Yeah.
And a lot of they're tactile learners. You need that hands-on. I think it's vital. So it is one of the requirements to be certified that there is a functioning piece of equipment. At
Absolutely.
Least one. Most have, multiple, in some cases, dozens.
Now, you were mentioning earlier an opportunity to actually do some of the live fire at a conference and expo. Is that something that you host as well, additional opportunities?
Yes. In addition to the consumer education and technical education, research and development is a big part of what Nora does. And almost all of that research for the last 10 years or so has been focused on transitioning to biofuels, eliminating the technical barriers to high adoption of high blends of biofuel. So as part of that, we have a quartz cylinder, which is basically a glass tube,
Mm-hmm.
but it's made of quartz, crystal clear, with a burner in it, and we can fire from different fuels on site. This is going to be at the Eastern Energy Expo in May.
Ooh, boy, I like that idea.
Actually, there's some videos up on the website too. You can see it from last year's, but we can transition, from fuel to fuel, from B0 petroleum to B5, 5% bio, B20, B50, and up to B100. We have a combustion analyzer on it, so the techs can see exactly what
The differences in the fuel mixtures.
Yeah, when you change this, the tubing's clear, so you can see when the transition happens.
Man, I want to see this
You'll
myself.
change it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It always draws a crowd.
This year, right?
Yeah. When's the next time? When's the next opportunity to see that?
May 23rd and 24th in Atlantic City.
Okay. Sounds like a great opportunity. I'll try to
do
get a
it at
link
some
up
other
for
places throughout the Northeast too, some other smaller events.
that. Okay. And so where is that at? Where's that going to be hosted?
It's Atlantic City at the Atlantic City Convention Center.
Yep. And is that, so where can we find out more information on that?
EasternEnergyExpo.com.
Okay. Yep, absolutely. I will grab that link and see if I can't get that in here as well, because that sounds like a great opportunity. Now, what about if I'm a school? Because primarily we've got educators out here. If I'm a school and I'm looking for opportunities to expand and maybe become part of this program, is the best way through the website, or is it through contacting somebody direct?
They can contact me directly or through the website, either one. There's a tech school application box on the website.
Okay. Fantastic.
It's not that tough. We'd love to, especially in the states where we're underrepresented, we'd love to expand the footprint.
Sure.
And hopefully the schools would find it a benefit to offer certification to their students.
And education for those programs. It's a biggie.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's 5 million out there. Somebody's gonna fix them.
Absolutely. They're going to be around for a while.
Quite a while. Hopefully.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Teaching This Teacher programs.
So we have a turnkey curriculum for the schools that partner with us.
Oh, okay.
There's a technical manual, quite extensive. It's available in paper as an
ebook as well? Ooh, nice.
It's on the website. No charge for the ebook. It's also available in an audio format. Also on the website. No charge again. The paper one, given the cost of printing, shipping, and everything else, unfortunately.
Cost a little bit.
Yeah, we use a contractor that fulfills the orders.
Sure.
So there is a charge for that. Everything else is available free of charge. There's PowerPoint that goes through it. It's probably 1,000+ slides. Quizzes to go along with it. The tests are all done electronically. So it's basically a turnkey curriculum. Somebody that wanted to do it can get all this stuff and go to it.
Now, is that on the Learning Resource Center?
The Learning Resource Center is a little bit different. Initially it started as a living addendum to the book. As we're talking about so many changes.
Yeah.
It's tough to reprint the book continually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So instead of doing this and making changes continually, we decided to do it online. In the back of each chapter, there's a QR code that brings you to that chapter in the Learning Resource Center.
Nice.
So that's kind of a repository for stuff that wouldn't fit in the books.
Yep.
Manufacturers' manuals, videos. We focused a lot on making short form videos.
Good for you.
Very task oriented. A lot of videos become huge. I mean, now it's not the YouTube generation, it's the TikTok generation. If you can't do it in 15 seconds, they're not interested. So we tried to keep it to 2 minutes, hopefully a minute.
Yep.
But very task oriented. How do I program this control? How do I do this function? Not teaching the entire curriculum. Very short task oriented. The tech might need on the site. So that's the repository of all those also. So it's stuff that doesn't fit in the book, and it's a reference.
Sure. Fantastic opportunity
area
for an educator.
Yeah, we're continually updating it, and the videos have been pretty popular. The short form, they have the buffers and the disclaimers, so they're probably a minute, 60 to 120 seconds, but very task oriented. How to accomplish something. Mostly focusing on the newer electronic controls.
Yeah.
Where if you're not up on them and the manuals can be a little bit, dense, I just want to do X.
Yep.
How do I check Y? And they're focused in that. Very task oriented, short.
Very nice. Really good for that service technician that may be confident in one particular brand and may not know another as well, and just looking for how do I get to these functions. I know what I need to do, but where do I get there?
I had to look it up when I made the videos.
Ah, look at that.
You forget. It's just, if you don't work on it every day, you
Yeah.
forget, which is the reason for the continuing education.
That's why this is such an important resource for our educators. So many times we just get out of the field long enough that we don't recognize when things have changed. So we're here just to provide resources for you. That's it. We could all be doing other things in our job. We decide to be here and to be part of this team, this village that is educating our HVAC industry and showing you where your resources are. Everything that you need to become better, whether you're an educator, a technician, a student, whether you're a distributor and a manufacturer. We have a variety of aspects to help provide you some input.
Absolutely. So does electrification equal decarbonization? As you're talking before, obviously it doesn't. It's been greatly exaggerated. It's going away. It's not even just an electrification movement. There's a no combustion movement. It's quite strong. So they don't want to burn anything anywhere.
Right.
Which is going to be tough.
Without understanding what they're actually burning and what the byproducts of burning. Because there's this
what would
stipulation.
be required to replace it.
Yes.
Yeah. So combustion is going to be around for quite a while. So you can decarbonize without electrifying, and you can electrify and unfortunately not decarbonize. So
That's been our biggest pushback.
I mean, when you let it off, you've basically got it in a nutshell. It's
right.
They're not, they're not one and the same. They're not synonymous. They could
Absolutely.
be, they can be, but not necessarily.
Because what if I'm going with electrification and I'm in a region of the country that I am still primarily powering my fuel, my electrical supply with carbon-based fuels? So that's been the pushback. Is electrification decarbonization? It can be. Is it in every scenario? Absolutely not, especially if you're in a market that is primarily still carbon-based fuel for your electrical generation. So there's a lot of understanding between those two elements of electrification and decarbonization that haven't been fully explained. And so we hope that it's making a little bit more sense. And if it doesn't, let us know what you're hanging up on. If you have any other aspects or perspectives on that, hop on in. We want to hear your point of view on this as well.
It's actually kind of an interesting point, guys, because so you buy an electric vehicle. Oh, I'm not contributing to the burning of fossil fuels. But the question is, how is the electricity that's powering your car being generated?
Where does the electricity
and a
come
very
from?
Good, percentage of the electricity that we're using to power our electric vehicles is from burning fossil fuels and wood and all.
Absolutely. I have a friend of mine that trades energy. So just like some people trade stock, he trades energy. And that price of energy absolutely fluctuates based on where it came from. What was the generation style of this electricity? And people that invest in that for long-term investments view it from that different perspective. What energy source is going to be around longest? So obviously we're starting to see those changes in carbon-based fuel supplies to generate electricity starting to not look as interesting as they have in the past.
It's going to take a while for the grid to decarbonize.
Truly.
I believe it's about 22% in 2022. So it's 78% still nuclear or fossil fuel.
Way to go. Absolutely.
Yeah, big chunk of it's nuclear, but a big chunk of it's still fossil fuel.
Yeah. Well, we seen in some energy crisis not too long ago here in the Midwest, one coal-fired power plant that was scheduled for decommissioning that had to be put on emergency continued use because the grid just didn't have enough of the solar supply that was anticipated to be up and running by that time. So we've seen some fossil fuel systems that should have been removed off of the grid, but couldn't just because we haven't quite supplemented that as much as we wanted to. So there's going to be a transitional period. It's not like we're flipping a switch one day and going, okay, we're done. We're no longer carbon-based. It's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster along the way, and understanding what these resources are is really why we're here.
I just got a text from one of our team members that reminded me that my new electric pickup truck is powered by coal. I'll leave it to you to figure out who sent me that.
I know one of two. I have my suspicion on the primary. Welcome to our world, Bob. We have fun doing what we do, and that's really
I can
the
tell.
goal. It is. When we talk about these things, they're difficult topics. There's people out here that don't want to talk about decarbonization. There's people that don't want to talk about fuel oil and that fuel oil is actually going to be around and that we're going to be moving towards electrification. So to be able to approach these from a positive perspective and give the resources that are needed to be successful in these transitions, that's really what it comes down to. So we have a whole team. Everyone here has different perspectives on some things, but when it comes down to education, we're all here for the right reason, to have fun and give back everything that we possibly can in the industry. And it all comes back to this. It all comes down to we are all in an effort to reduce our carbon footprint, to reduce the volumetric tons of CO2 that's being produced, and to be able to leave a legacy for our families, really, in the long run. It's a matter of leaving a legacy for the generations that are coming behind us to have a chance to survive in a planet that is still very hospitable. So we've all seen effects of global warming. Some will challenge global warming as it's just a phase, and there are phases in the natural cycle of the world, of the planet, but this one is a little different. And you're going to be on one of two perspectives. Either it's not happening and we don't need to change anything, or it is happening and we need to change a lot. And that is the way that we have to look at the world, is we really do have a lot of things to change. Whether you support decarbonization and electrification or you don't, we have things that we need to change to be able to continue the lives that we know. So welcome to our village, and let's talk about some of the reasons where it can be hard to electrify. We've touched on some of them pretty well.
These are two right here, hot water systems. Eugene should be familiar with that one on the right there. A little bit. That look familiar?
One on the right?
The one on the right, the Bidaris. It's a Bidaris hot water boiler.
Oh, yeah, that's not the one from my house.
No, it's close. Different model, but similar.
Same from one. Okay.
Yeah. The one on the left is a steam boiler. A lot of steam still, from the Baltimore up to Portland, Maine area.
Sure.
Actually, a lot in the Midwest, in the older, the Cleveland, Pittsburgh,
I just went to a local community college just outside of Indianapolis that just got a brand new steam trainer just for these kind of applications, so that they can now start training another generation of technicians on all of these steam boilers that are still out there. And theirs is an industrial design that's used at a local manufacturing company. So there's a really good chance that they can encounter fuel-fired steam boilers in their job.
They're real tough to decarbonize. Generally, cities, more urban areas, incredibly tough, generally no ducting in it. So to decarbonize, and they've gotten used to the steam. It's radiation, so it's a very comfortable, different type of heat than you would get from mini split heat pumps.
Absolutely,
you're not going to use a ducted system in a house like that. No. A lot of them have prescriptions against it, historical and all kinds of stuff going on. But there's still a ton of steam systems out there, and through the actually out into the West also. Anywhere there's older housing stock pre-World War II.
Sure,
it's very, very common. They're going to be hard to electrify, almost impossible. A hot water boiler, the one on the right's a hot water system.
Yeah.
Typically in the United States, we use higher temperature emitters, fit to baseboard radiators, convectors, things like that, rather than radiant or panel radiators that can work at a lower temperature. Mm-hmm. What do you do with them? Again, also mostly Northeast, but there's a lot of them all over the place. There's Minnesota. There's a ton. Very difficult to electrify these. Again, generally not ducted AC systems in the house, and when they do have them, the ductwork's generally undersized for heat pump use. These are high heat loss houses, cold climate. Again, they're tough to electrify. What do you do with these? It's a lot easier to change the fuel than change the system.
Exactly. So it leaves that open opportunity.
And there's also a big push, really about educating and the population, the public, about changes in technologies, forgetting even about changes in equipment,
sure,
changes in techniques that are used to install these systems. So Bob had referred to the Budaris on the right, because Bob changed my system in my house. I had a hydrocoil system.
Oh, really?
And so Bob did the work in my home on Long Island, and I got home from work and I saw that he had installed a whole system with press fittings. And if Bob remembers, I kind of freaked out. I'm an old school guy.
Right.
I'm a soldering and brazing guy.
Right.
I don't know if Bob knows, but I spent the first 3 nights sleeping in the room with that boiler, waiting
looking for leaks.
So, and I'm in the industry, so it really is it's really falls on all of us to educate the population about equipment and technologies and just new ways of doing things.
That's right.
Because a lot of us have these old school mentalities that really need to be brought into the 21st century, be it equipment, be it technology, be it methods. So it really does form a neat little package, to move us forward.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm an early adopter on the press. That's become universal now. Almost everybody uses it at this point. Very, very common.
No, but I don't know if you knew the story that I slept in that room waiting for.
I did not know that. But nothing happened, obviously. No, they've become predominant.
Yeah, absolutely.
The speed, reliability is just, you can't match it soldering. So these are going to be some tough ones. So we were talking before about carbon productions. What does biodiesel actually do? At B100, you're going to get a 70% reduction in CO2 emissions.
Wow.
Depends on the feedstock. Some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower. But
if
you look at the whole pool of available fuels, it's about 70%. It's not 100% because of the production and the farming and the tractors and everything that goes into making it.
There's some utilization still. Yeah.
So it's a life cycle number. It's the entire cradle to grave. They're working on getting that number down, obviously. If you use biodiesel in the tractors on the farm in Indiana or Illinois, that's going to help, and so forth. It's moving downward rapidly, but right now it's 70%, which is substantial. The grid in 2022 was 22% renewable. So you can make a much bigger impact than electrifying. Some states are higher. That's a nationwide number. New York State is 36%. I'm familiar with that one. It's a little higher than the nationwide average. Some, like Wyoming, is single digits or less. Yeah. So there's a big variation. Pacific Northwest is kind of high too. A lot of, hydropower out there. Yeah. So the point is really the time value of carbon. Carbon stays in the atmosphere for quite a period of time. It's not a short cycle. So carbon that you don't emit today is better than carbon you saved 10 years from now, because it didn't have that time period to sit in the atmosphere and have its effect. So it actually has a time value, kind of like compound interest.
It's a compounding effect.
Yeah, it's a compounding effect. So saving carbon today, a ton today, is worth much more 10 years from now. So could it be a bridge to electrification? It could be. It may be. But the immediate bang for the buck is in the renewable fuels. Much worth much more. And as you mentioned, the heat pumps is only as clean as the grid powering it.
That's right.
If you're on a 36% clean grid, it's a lot. And then they also leave out the efficiency of the grid itself. It's about 66% is lost in transmission losses, heat losses, and generation. So
it's significantly high. I didn't realize it was that high.
It is. It's substantial. They're great on a clean. I mean, they're great. They do the job. There's no doubt. But it's not the perfect solution for every application. Kind of said, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But you don't go on service calls with one wrench and one screwdriver. You need a full tool bag.
You need a full tool bag.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you need all the tools, and you need to know how to use them.
That's it.
Write that down, Bob.
I know. I absolutely love that.
The hammer.
Everything looks like a nail.
It's not. It's you can't get a simple solution to a complex problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a complex, multi-level problem.
We talk about the different tools of our trade. Had a really good podcast with Greg Guzzi. When we were out at the National HVACR Education Conference this year. It's on our new podcast channel, and that is the name of it. It's Not Your Father's Hammer. And we discuss the changes of the tools of the trade, where if you had a hammer that was used by your grandfather, it was still serving the same purpose today. And you can continue to move that hammer down as long as it's being used for that specific application. But the trade itself, even look at the construction trade. That hammer might not be as useful today as it has been in the past. You may be using a pneumatic nailer, a gas-powered nailer. You may be using an electric-powered nailer. You may not even be using a nailer. You may be using a stapler. You may be using other tools that have changed because our industry has become more efficient. So to become more efficient, we have to be aware of all of the tools that are at our disposal. So nice segue in there.
Most of them, once you try it, you're not going back.
I hear you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the learning resources. We've touched on this before. You have quite a few things on the network, so we want to make sure, grab a picture of that QR code, get you onto the website, dive into some of the resources that we have. And remember, it's all here for this same purpose of decarbonization. One of the things I wanted to talk about, I threw this in just kind of like a little teaser and a question. We kind of mentioned it when we were on a phone conversation, a little bit about hydrogen fuels. So what do you see in hydrogen fuels in our industry? Is there a place for them?
I believe there is. I mean, I'm a liquid fuel guy.
Yeah.
Although obviously I've been doing this for 40 something years, so I'm pretty familiar, but I'm not an expert in hydrogen.
Yeah.
I know they're very hot on it, no pun intended, in Europe.
Yeah.
Large percentage of the boilers, the condensing gas boilers that's sold in Europe, are convertible to hydrogen. You buy a kit, a little more complicated than a natural gas to propane conversion or vice versa. The flame speed of hydrogen is quite rapid, burns very quickly, low energy content. But if you can produce it cleanly, green hydrogen, it's certainly a viable resource. There's how many gas furnaces in this country?
Exactly.
And to think that they're going anywhere, this year or next year or the year after that is, it just doesn't make any sense, right?
That's exactly right. That's why I wonder. I don't know enough myself, so I have to reach out. So if there's any resources out there on hydrogen-based fuel systems for like our natural gas and propane, very interested in learning more about that because hydrogen fuel has been around a very long time. So it's some of those things that we need to be aware of transitions in our industry, just like going from our petroleum-based oils into our renewable style oils for operating our combustion-fired equipment. All right. Anyone out there have any questions that they want to grab? Eugene, have we got any comments that comes through or have anything we want to share for dear Eugene today?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I actually do have, I would get a number of letters sent to me and, talking about our education conference.
Sure.
And, and I kind of took them and ran with them a little bit.
Yeah.
And made them a little more colorful.
Ooh, well.
To expand a little bit on that.
I got a colorful intro for you just for that. Are you all ready? A new portion of Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show.
Wow.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah. So,
dear Eugene.
So here's a neat one about our conference.
Mm-hmm.
Dear Eugene, my administrator wants to know why an HVACR instructor would need professional development. Mm-hmm. What's changed in the HVACR industry in the past 30 years? By the way, my administrator has a doctorate in Shakespearean studies and attends an annual conference on Shakespeare to keep up to date on what's new with Shakespeare. And this letter came from, sincerely, Mini Splits, Schmini Splits.
Oh, my.
Well, dear Splits, I'm not an expert on Shakespeare, but I'm quite certain that there have been a lot more changes in HVACR than in the Shakespearean world. While Shakespeare has been dead for over 400 years, HVACR is alive and well. So the short answer to Mini Split's question is, what's changed in our industry? Everything. So people that are completing HVAC training programs right now are entering an industry that is so different from the industry that we worked on.
Yeah.
Bob's been in this industry for 40 plus years. I've been in this industry 40 plus years. So many of the people who are teaching our students about new technologies never worked on those technologies.
That's the struggle.
Think about what Bob was talking about today. Meaning we have equipment that's running on newer fuels. We have equipment that's connected to the cloud. We have inverter technologies. We do remote monitoring, remote diagnostics. Controls have undergone such a massive renaissance. Mini split technologies.
I have a boiler running on soybeans.
Yeah. So even look at our hydronic heating systems and look at the fuels we're using. So yes, mini splits. Our conference is a great opportunity to stay up to date on our industry. So feel free to tell your administrator to give me a call, and we could talk about Shakespeare a little bit, but we can definitely talk about what's changed in HVACR.
Thank you so much. Mini splits.
Mini splits. Yeah.
All right, Bob, any last minute things we'd like to add? And anyone out in the chat, this is your opportunity to ask some questions or to have some comments. Please hop in there before we wrap up the show. And we're grateful that you have joined us.
I just wanted to thank you for the invite.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it tremendously. I went to the conference this year for the first time, and I could answer mini split also. It's definitely worth the investment of time and energy. Learned quite a bit.
Yeah, it was really a good opportunity.
Great conference.
Yeah, we were really glad you were able to join us.
Very
glad to be there.
Hopefully we'll see us in class next year.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful day. We thank you so much for spending your time hanging out with us on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show, and we hope that you join us on our new podcast, Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Podcast, where we have 15 to 20-minute short stories, a variety, 5 different flavors, actually, about our industry and ways to better educate ourselves and others. So thanks again. We'll see you next week. Are you looking for a new adventure in audio education? Then look no further than the new opportunity from the ESCO Institute. Did you know, the ESCO HVAC Podcast? Join us from your favorite podcast network as we share stories and lessons from industry professionals like you. Find all of the ESCO resources at escogroup.org.